Okay, welcome to another Buddhism Edexcel A-level podcast, video. This time we're going to focus in on some assessment questions. Here's a question and a pretty good answer. The question is a question 1, an 8-mark question. Explore the extent to which the Buddha rejected the Hinduism of his time. So read the answer. Here it is. To this day, there remains much debate as to whether the Buddhist teaching are directly influenced by Hinduism, meaning Brahmanism, and contemporary religious ferment, or are they a rejection of Hinduism completely? It seems pretty obvious that they are not a complete rejection because the Buddha incorporated many ideas from Hinduism, and Buddhism such as the idea of samsara. He also acknowledged the existence of deities and the use of meditation as a method of achieving freedom from samsara. However, he also modified certain beliefs such as karma, which had become not only susceptible to action, but also to thoughts as well. He didn't believe in the caste system, and instead believed that freedom from samsara would be a result of achieving enlightenment by following the middle path. He also modified the idea of reincarnation to lean more towards rebirth, which instead of suggesting the idea of permanent entity, Atman, going through samsara, it was more a passing on of energies from one life to the next. However, the Buddha did not flat out reject the idea of Atman, the soul, and believed in the principle of anatta, or non-self, meaning there was no permanent entity within us. Although the Buddha rejected some Hindu beliefs, he was also influenced by many Hindu beliefs. So in conclusion, the extent to which Buddha rejected Hinduism goes so far as he modified many already existing beliefs so as to fit his worldview and philosophy. Right, now for an easy level task, what I want you to do is read that again and write 5 indicative content statements in the mark scheme below where the question marks are. Here's the mark scheme. Can you think of 5 sentences to fill in that indicative bit? So we've got a pretty good answer there. It was level 3, a wide range of knowledge, specialist language and terminology were carefully selected and used appropriately. Knowledge and understanding addressing a broad range of key religious ideas and beliefs, and it was comprehensively developed key ideas and beliefs and showed a real depth of understanding. So it was a good answer. See if you can create the indicative descriptors in here. Okay, so read through. There you go. And I write down, can you note 5 sentences you can pull out of that essay. So that's an 8-mark essay, example 1. Now let's look at example 2. Now this is a 12-mark essay of the 6 we'll look at. The question is, assess the view that the Buddhist teaching and practices owes more to the religious context at the time of the Buddha than the Buddha himself. Okay. And the answer, in order to understand the religious background at the time of the Buddha, one must consider the mainstay religion of the time, which was Hinduism. However, Hinduism is a very broad term in itself, meant to simply describe the religious traditions of the Indus Valley. So more specifically, Brahmanism. Brahmanism was the religion which, being the product of a wealthy family, the Buddha would have had been most familiar with at the time of his upbringing. Brahmanism is a religion which is based on a series of texts known as the Vedas. These texts would have provided instructions for priests, otherwise known as Brahmin, to conduct rituals, mostly animal sacrifices, known as Vedic sacrifices. It was believed that the prayers offered during the sacrifice would satisfy the gods and help retain order in the universe. This would be because Brahmanism states that there are 3 levels of existence in the universe. The phonic, the spiritual, and the physical. So as chanting catered to the phonic, while the prayers were aimed at appeasing the spiritual, and the sacrifice were the physical. The sacrifices were held because central Brahmanism is the goal of liberating one's Atman from samsara and so to rejoin the Brahman universal spirit. The way one did so was by achieving good karma through sacrifices, and one would then advance through samsara, through reincarnation until reaching the last stage, that of a Brahman, where one would then die and eventually be liberated from the cycle of samsara. However, many historians believe at the time of the Buddha, Brahmanism underwent a kind of ascetic reform, and that people, due to the increase in leisure time as a result of economic prosperity, undertook further investigation of religious ideas and began to question the ancient Vedas. This led to the formulation of the Samana movement, which was groups of wandering ascetics known as sadhus, who would break off all ties with their families and seek out extreme methods in order to gain religious insight. The most prominent of those groups would be the Jains, who didn't believe in the caste system or Vedic sacrifices. Instead, replaced the idea of the Atman with the idea of the Jiva, or the life essence. They believed that the Jiva would achieve liberation from samsara in two ways: by living a very disciplined lifestyle, in which involved extreme methods of meditation and yoga, or two, through a policy of non-action, which included the principle of ahimsa, or non-harming, in order to wipe out any existing karma. Other groups, including the materialists, who were empirical in nature and chose to celebrate life through following a moral and noble path. The Ajvakas, who were similar to the Jains, except that they rejected the karma and believed that every Atman had its niyatiya, or destiny, which already had been decided and would not be altered. And finally, the skeptics, whose role was to play devil's advocate all the times. The time of the Buddha was very interesting, of course, and an exciting time in terms of religious thought. It is without doubt that Brahmanism, along with contemporary religious ferment, influenced Siddhartha Gautama. Right, now for your task, second task, a little bit harder. Read again the essay. Okay, so this whole essay, question, view the Buddhist teaching and practice, owes more to the religious context in the time of the Buddha than to the Buddha himself. Okay, read that and read that. Now you got a choice. Either write the three AO1 and missing AO2 indicative content statements you need for that assessment, or look at my conclusion. Isn't that a bit weak? I'm sure you can do loads better. You can sum up the arguments much better. It's a very weak conclusion. Have a go at that, one of those two things. Third and final task. Now I've got 4 more sample essays. Now what I want you to do is, simply using the above mark schemes, have a go at marking these. Here's my first essay. Explore the social and economic background in India at the time of the Buddha. All right. Here's this first essay. The Buddha, or otherwise known as Siddhartha Gautama, was born in northern India, approximately 500 BCE. The society which he was born into was a very stratified society, which was dominated by Brahmanism. Brahmanism is the ancient Hindu religion which associated the idea of the caste system, which dominated all aspects of society. The caste system was a hierarchy which put everyone into categories. At the bottom of the spectrum were the untouchables, who were the pariahs. Then there were the artisans, the various tradesmen. Then there were the Kshatriyas, or the ruling warrior class. And at the top were the Brahmins, the priestly caste. The idea behind the caste system was that one would be reborn in a different caste depending on the individual's karma. Karma is right. And eventually their Atman, or soul, would achieve moksha and rejoin the Brahman. The Buddha was born in a Kshatriya, the ruling warrior class, that was responsible for maintaining peace and order in society by sponsoring the Brahmins to hold Vedic sacrifices, which were believed to maintain the order of the universe. However, the time of the Buddha was a time of great change. There was an increasing urbanization, which led to the challenges towards the caste system, as societal relations were changing, as people were living in close proximity to each other. People were starting to challenge the Brahmanist notion that people were automatically born into categories of society and couldn't change their circumstances. Urbanization, however, led to the loss of tribal leadership and the development of monarchies, which naturally led to Kshatriyas becoming ever more powerful. It was also said the time of economic prosperity, which in turn led to an increase in leisure time. This increase in leisure time led to people other than Brahmins taking on religious pursuits, and was even starting to become somewhat of a hobby. The development of monarchies, coupled with the increase in religious pursuits, led to the Kshatriyas starting to challenge the ideas of the Brahmins, increasing a conflict between the two, which would have reached its peak at the time of the Buddha. There were even accounts of kings and of monarchs teaching the new religious ideas to the priestly class. In summary, the sociological and economic background at the time of the Buddha was one of great change. Sample 3. What mark would you give that out of 8? Question 4. Explore the religious background in the time of the Buddha. This is 8 marks again. The dominant religion at the time of the Buddha was an early form of Hinduism known as Brahmanism or Vedism. Brahmanism was a religion which was based on the Vedas, which were ancient texts which provided instructions for the Brahmins, their priestly caste, on how to conduct animal sacrifices. These sacrifices were often commissioned by the ruling class, the Kshatriyas, because it was believed that they would maintain order in the universe, because chanting would involve phonic, while the prayers appeased the spiritual and the physical was represented by the sacrifice. This leads to another aspect of Brahmanism, which was very important. That was a belief in the caste system, which had also had an effect on how society was organized. The caste system classed people based on their birth. At the bottom of the spectrum were the merchants and artisans. Then, while at the top of the spectrum were the priestly class. And just under them, the Kshatriyas, the rulers. It was believed that by commissioning these sacrifices, not only was order maintained, but was also good karma, it should be karma action, which would help the Atman, the soul, the individual, to be reincarnated in a higher caste. Once having been reincarnated as Brahman, it was believed that after being a Brahman, one's Atman would achieve moksha, which meant leaving the world of samsara, joining the Brahman. However, at the time of the Buddha, Brahmanism was facing a lot of opposition due to changes in society as a result of urbanization. Historians claim at the time of the Buddha, there was a kind of religious renewal where people were starting to spend more and more time seeking truth, independent of the Brahmins' teachings. This led to an increase in popularity of the Samana movement. The Samana movement, which had been around even before the Buddha, were very integral to the religious background at the time of the Buddha. They were essentially groups of wandering holy men seeking out spiritual truth, some through extreme ascetic practices. One of the most prominent groups was the Jains, who rejected the caste system, believed not only in the Atman or soul, but in Jiva, life essence. They believed in the spiritual truth could be achieved by extreme aesthetic practices, but also by wiping out all existent unwholesome karma, by pursuing a policy of ahimsa, but non-harming. Other examples of the Samana movement would be the Akjavas, who rejected the idea of karma and instead believed in niyatya, or destiny, which was the idea that everything was predetermined and nothing could modify it, even when you would achieve moksha was predetermined. Another Samana group was the materialist, who believed that there was no point in debating and believing in things which couldn't be proven. Instead, they were empirical by nature and celebrated life and believed that one should do what feels natural to them. While some partook of hedonist activities, the celebration of life was mostly done by encouraging moral lifestyle. Samana movements, along with other folk traditions at the time of the Buddha, were a very eclectic group and can be said in a way to have contributed to Buddhism. Okay, out of 8 marks, what would you give that? On to a 12-mark essay. Assess the extent to which the sociological and economic conditions influence the teachings of the Buddha. At the time of the Buddha, the increase in monarchy and the increase in religious pursuits as a result of increase in leisure time led to a conflict between the Kshatriyas and the Brahmins, which reached its peak at the time of the Buddha. So it's no coincidence that the Buddha so easily rejected the authority of the Brahmins and embarked in his pursuit of religious truth. Urbanization, which had brought people in close proximity of each other, would have also contributed to his rejection of the caste system. Urbanization may have also led to the four sights. The four sights was when the Buddha escaped the palace with his charioteer, and he saw four different kinds of people, which would have provided him with insight in the human condition and set him on the path to seek religious truth. The four sights were also key in Buddhist teachings in that it demonstrated some of the core concepts of Buddhism, such as anicca, or impermanence, and dukkha, or suffering. Some, on the other hand, may argue that Dharma, the Buddhist teaching, or more literally eternal truth, could not have been influenced by sociological and economic conditions at the time of the Buddha. Seeing as he did not create the Dharma, he simply revealed it to the world. This view, however, takes the hagiography of the Buddha, i.e. the life of the Buddha, literally, and the fact that the Buddha's beliefs closely resemble the contemporary religious firmness at the sign shows that the Buddha would have been influenced by his surroundings. Sample answer 6 then. Last question. Assess the extent to which the Buddha rejected the Hinduism of his time. It's a 12-mark question. Okay, here we go. The Buddha rejected many ideas associated with Hinduism of his time, which included the dominant religions of Brahmanism, along with the Samana movements of the time. He rejected the idea of permanent entity within oneself, or even the existence of a permanent entity in the universe. So, for example, the ideas of Atman in Brahmanism, the idea of Jiva with the Jains, or the concept of Niyati. He was similar to the Jains in that he rejected the caste system and the Vedic sacrifices. However, he did also reject the extreme ascetic practice undertaken by the Jains, and instead believed in the middle path as the best way to achieve spiritual enlightenment. It would be unfair to say the Buddha completely rejected Hinduism in his time, as he did keep some aspects of the existence of the gods and the idea of samsara. Although much less important to Buddhism, gods were present in the world of samsara. He also did believe that meditation was the way to eventually achieve enlightenment, something shared by all facets of Hinduism. He also modified some aspects of Hinduism, such as reincarnation, which was reincarnated as rebirth because reincarnation implied the existence of a permanent entity. He also modified karma so that it also included the intention behind the action, not just the action itself, that was important in determining future rebirth. In conclusion, it's clear that the Buddha only rejected the Hinduism of his time to a certain extent, but not fully, as he included similar concepts in Buddhist teachings. So, out of 12 marks, what would you give this essay? Okay. And carefully look back at the, scroll back to the video and look at the mark scheme. What about this one out of 12 marks? Scroll back in the video and have a look at it. And a sample answer 4 is only 8 marks. What would you give this one? Sample answer 3. 8 marks. What would you give it? Thanks for watching. Tune in again.